Do you want to know how I just sold a fully furnished Airbnb on Didion Stone Court in Maryland, and I had to bring $5,000 to the table in order to be able to close on a property that brought us on average $7,500 to $10,800 on a monthly basis in terms of cash flow for just a couple of months, right? Maybe about 6 months out of the year. I had to sell this property, and me, the seller, I had to bring money to the table in order to close. You want to know why? Because I bought it with low equity. You want to know how my friend Daryl is right now in $300,000 in negative debt? It is because of the low equity rental strategy, or you can call it, low equity deals strategy. And typically this happens in the creative finance niche, right? If you don't know what creative finance is when you buy properties subject to or seller finance, but with low equity deals is 99.9% of properties that are actually subject to. The transaction you will do is subject to because these homeowners have a loan that they took, and right now they're trying to sell it because they regret the decision they made to buy the single family or whatever the case may be. They want to sell it, but the property didn't appreciate enough, and they owe basically what they could sell the property for, and they're desperate to get rid of it. And one of the very popular niches for the newbies in the creative finance industry is to market to those homeowners that are obviously in distress. They just want to see the mortgage go, and then convince them to leave that loan in place, right, under name and under credit, and transfer title to the buyer. So the buyer will own the property and the loans will stay on the seller's name. And then the buyer will take the property and, do whatever, Airbnb, rentals, wrap around. I have a whole playlist explaining all these different strategies, but that's the idea, right? So this is what is called subject to, is when you buy a property, you don't go to the bank to take a loan. You just take over the seller's existing loan, but you don't transfer it on your credit. You don't go to the bank and qualify for the loan. The bank don't check your credit. So essentially it stays on the seller's credit. Sounds appealing, obviously, because it's very low cash upfront, sometimes even no cash upfront at all. And these sellers, because they're so desperate, they can typically take like $5K upfront. I remember this property here. I sold it at $620,000. And guys, the seller, when I bought this property subject to, this fully furnished Airbnb, I gave him like $5,000 in his pockets in order to close and have him leave his VA loan that he took over 10 years ago in place, right? And all I'm doing is making the monthly payments. So if you buy a property subject to, you're responsible for just the monthly payments. Now, there's a couple of risks that comes with this. So guys, if you stick to the end, you'll understand exactly why, as a newbie, this is not a great strategy, even though it sounds appealing, because even if you don't know how to negotiate with a homeowner, when you call these homeowners, there's not a lot of negotiations because they actually want to see this property go. They're tired of the mortgage. The mortgage is their pain. All right, guys, welcome to the Boom Effect podcast, guys. Obviously, this is the podcast where we have bold conversations, where we're obsessed, where we are optimistic, and lastly, we have a mindset that's abundant. That's the reason why we share the whole journey. Today, I don't have my co-host Andrew and Steve with me, so I'm just doing it alone, guys. So again, listen, this is not for entertainment. I'm not here to entertain you. I'm here to just help you avoid the same mistakes that me, Daryl Ellison, that is now $300,000 in negative debt because of this strategy, and dozens of other newbies in real estate in the creative finance space. But they're just maybe too ashamed to talk about it. A lot of people obviously don't want to go online and say, hey, I bought a property using the strategy of low equity, and now I regret it. I have to offload my whole portfolio because for whatever reason, the exit strategy that I chose, if you guys don't know what exit strategy is, if you buy a property from a homeowner or on the market with a realtor, that is acquisition. Now, what you do with the property in the back end is called exit strategy, right? So whether you do fix and flip, buy and hold, Airbnb, midterm rentals, co-living, you name it, that is the exit strategy. So the exit strategy that I chose to do on this property ended up not working as well as I thought. Maybe because I ran my numbers not correctly. Maybe because I was too optimistic about the location, especially if it's Airbnb. That happened to me on 2 properties. One was in Virginia, right? So back in I think it was 2021, 2022, when Biden administration was printing money and giving stimulus checks, everybody was traveling, right? Everybody was traveling. Everybody had money. Interest rates with the lender was about like what, 3-4%, right? So everybody had money. And at that time, if you just took any property in any location, it doesn't have to be a tourist location. It doesn't have to be a location that people come there to visit something, and people with money, like let's say Miami or whatever the case may be. You could take any property in any zip code, turn it into Airbnb, put a carpet, paint the property, put your grandma's picture on the wall, and you will get Airbnb bookings. Now, it sounded good, and it sounded, it was very appealing. Everybody started getting into Airbnb. YouTube universities started getting flooded with Airbnb gurus talking about Airbnb arbitrage. That's when you do the Airbnb strategy where you don't buy the property, but you rent it, and then you sublease it on Airbnb. So essentially, you don't own the property, but you're doing a subleasing strategy. People was talking about it, was very popular. So at that time, what people didn't realize is that when the interest rate go up, like right now, and inflation kicks in, and we, the taxpayers, we start paying for all those, fake fiat money that was printed. Well, we're the one who's going to pay for it. And also at that time, only the professionals that actually bought Airbnbs that was very strategic about their purchase and knew the market, knew the niche, knew the perfect zip codes, the perfect locations where people with money will go from January to November. So if they bought a property in that location, they knew the property is only going to be vacant maybe about 2 months out of the year, right? Those are the people that, kept their properties and still was able to make money when the interest rate went from 4% to 8%. Right? Those people were still making money because of the location that they chose, and also because they're professionals. Like, they understand that is their niche. They're not all over the place. They're not like a fix and flipper and then also Airbnb and then also whatever. Like, that is their niche. And with that, so they have like systems, they have great customer service, the properties is well designed, well furnished, the zip codes, the perfect zip code, perfect location. So those still made money. But every single newbie that got excited about the cash flow, passive income, and then heard about the low equity strategy. So the low equity strategy, guys, very simple. So let's take an example of, a homeowner that want to buy a home back in 2021. And they go in and maybe they're making less than $50,000 a year, and they get excited. By the way, one of the properties I bought, this is true story. This is how the homeowner bought the property and regretted it. So they get excited because everybody, again, is making money. So they go to a area where the properties are selling for $500,000. But technically, if the economy, wasn't like being flooded with fake fiat money, they wouldn't be able to afford it based on their job and based on their income. But they go ahead anyway and buy the property at $500,000 through FHA, let's say, for example, and they're making money. And then 1 year later, they either lose their jobs, which happen to millions of people, or interest rates go up, their insurance on the property go up, and they realize that, oh man, at first I started with, I don't know, $2,000 on a monthly basis on my monthly payment, and now my payment just went up to like almost $3,000. I can't do this, right? I just bought a property, I had one job, and now if I want to keep up just to pay my mortgage, because obviously it's a single family, I can't do nothing with it, I live in it, right? So it's expensive, it's not bringing you any income. It's not like you have a duplex where you rent in one unit and then you live in one unit. So they realize that, you know what? I'm tired of the mortgage. Like, there is no way I'm going to work 5 different jobs just to keep up with a mortgage. So they decide to sell. Now, if you know anything about real estate, it takes, right, well over a year for a property to appreciate in equity. This is the danger of the low equity deals, is that if you buy a property with low equity, what essentially you're buying is almost like going to a restaurant where you have a menu and it says steak, but the steak says right next to it, steak bone only, there is no meat at all. If a property don't have equity, that means if you sell the property, you either gonna sell it for what you owe on the property, so exactly for the mortgage that you owe on the property, or because there is fees involved in selling a property, it ranges between 6 to 8% for you, the homeowner that is selling the property, because you have The seller's agent, right? If you use a real estate agent to list the property on the market, they'll charge you like 3%. Then you have the buyer's agent. The buyer is that is going to make an offer on your property, also have an agent. So both combined now you have 6%. And then you have the closing costs with the title attorney, the title company, which ranges, between 2 to 3%. So you are only in 8% of the resale. So if your property is only worth what you bought it not long ago, because it's only been a year, it haven't been 7, 8, 9 years, the property didn't appreciate in equity, and so you still owe exactly what the property is worth. That is what makes a property low equity. So let's imagine you're a newbie in real estate, and then you can go and do Airbnb, and then you can buy, you can find homeowners that are in distress because they don't have equity at all. They regret buying the property. They want to let it go. You can pull that list online using, third-party companies like PropStream, PropWire, Zillow, you name it. So you call these homeowners because they're distressed. You can see the properties on the MLS because typically those properties are listed and they've been on the market for 3 months, 4 months. It's easy to see that, okay, why is this property new? And even you can see through the pictures, and it's been 4 months that this property haven't sold. And so the idea is for you to call the real estate agent or the seller through a cold call strategy, outreach strategy, and convince them, right, that, hey, instead of you, selling the property right now, based on what you owe, and potentially bring, like I just did, $5,000 on the closing table, or $10,000, which 80% of the U.S. population don't have in the savings account, right? Instead of you having to write a check to sell your home, how about I write you a check? So I give you $5,000, but in exchange, I don't want to go to Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, wherever you took your loan, to qualify for a loan just to cash out your loan. So I want you to leave that loan in place. Obviously, I'm obviously, simplifying it here. Is a little bit lengthier mechanics involved in between, but just to simplify the process, I want you to leave it in place on your name. So, the benefit for me is now I don't have to go show my credit to Bank of America. The benefit for me is I don't have to, put a big down payment, obviously, if I go through the bank, right? I don't have to show my pay stubs, because if I want to qualify for FHA or VA, I have to show my pay stubs. I don't have to go through all those headaches. You just leave it on your credit, right? And on your name. And all we're going to do is we're going to transfer the title to me. So I will own it as the buyer. I'll give you $5,000. I'll pay for the closing costs. So now instead of you having to come out of pocket to sell your property, you're actually getting money in your pocket, right, to sell your property, and in exchange, you're leaving the loan in place. And I will be responsible moving forward to make the monthly payments on that loan. Now, technically, the homeowner that sells the property this way, which is selling the property subject to, is still liable for this mortgage, technically. And the reason for that is because when you take a loan to buy a property, the lenders, they have a clause within those documents, right? And I did a whole podcast with 30 plus years attorney Michael Gross speaking about the due on sale clause. So every lender have a clause that says, if you sell the property, basically the note is due. They call it the due on sale. Due on sale, very literal. So the loan is due on the sale of the property, due on sale. So the risk you're taking as the buyer here is if you buy a property where the homeowner was in distress, and because they don't have equity, you give them $5,000. Let's say they owe $400,000. Like in my scenario, the guy owed about $378,000 on the property. Plus, he had a second loan of $80,000 and as a HELOC that he took before, a home equity line of credit. So I took over 2 different loans subject to transfer title to my name. Those 2 loans stayed on the homeowner's name, and I'm just making the monthly payments. Okay. What is the risk he's taking, and what is the risk I am taking? The risk that the homeowner is taking is that because the loan is still on his name and his credit, if me, Mamadou, or my company misses a payment or we pay late, whose credit get hit? Obviously the homeowner. If we pay on time, and we're always on time, and my company always pays on time, who also gets the benefit of it? Obviously the homeowner, because it's on his credit. It doesn't benefit my credit, right? So that is the risk he's taking. The other risk the homeowner is taking, obviously, is in case things go left. In case the buyer's company goes out of business or something happens to the buyer, passes away, now the homeowner will probably have to step in, try it, maybe through a foreclosure process or something like that to get the property back and maybe resell it or keep it and, keep making those payments and do whatever they want with it. And typically within the paperwork, all of those things is written, right? We have multiple clauses that protects the homeowner and that protects the buyer as well, right? Because we're both taking risk. So that's the risk that the seller is taking, obviously, on his credit. Now, when you buy it subject to, obviously the buyer owns the property. The property no longer belongs to the seller. Just the loan is still on the seller's name, okay? So the risk that me as a buyer I'm taking is what? Is I took over a loan that I didn't go and qualify for myself, right? Bank of America lended John. Bank of America lended John. And I have a couple of properties like this, right? There is nothing illegal about the transaction. I've spoken to so many attorneys. All these transactions go through attorneys. I'm just speaking of the risk and why it's so dangerous to do this strategy with a low equity. If the property has equity, no problem at all. And I'll explain in a few why equity is so important, right? And so if I buy, the risk I'm taking is that obviously it says, in full disclosure within the paperwork that me as the buyer, I understand, and the seller also understand that there is the due on sale possibility. Meaning, if Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo realizes that it doesn't mean the will. These are big banks, right? The small banks, you don't do it this way, right? A whole video for another day. But with the big banks, they typically don't because they're in the business of not real estate, but of giving loans. So as long as the loan is paid on time, they don't care who's making the payment, really. The only time that it triggers anything is if you start missing too many payments or you go there and you make a mistake on the insurance, right? And I'll address that in a minute. So the risk I'm taking is that first, it says the due on sale is a possibility. What does that mean? That means me, Mamadou, I could convince the homeowner, in this case, for my Airbnb, it was Stan. I convinced Stan to leave the VA loan in place. I take over the monthly payments. I keep making the payments on his behalf. But there is no guarantee that in a month, in 2 months, in a year, by the way, it did happen to me on the property, the lender is not going to realize that the ownership of the property did transfer hands, this change hands, and they go, oh, shit, we don't know who Mamadou is. Who the heck is Mamadou? Or who the heck is Mamadou's LLC, whatever your company name is. We didn't lend him no money to buy this property. We lended Stan. So they'll reach out to you and go, hey, we're calling the note due, the due on sale. We're calling the note due. That means it's time to pay up. That means it's time to pay the loan in full. There's a couple of different ways to handle it. There's no need to panic if something like this happened. It already happened to me. Because it's not like the lender can just wake up in the morning and then say, hey, give me the keys. And that's not how it works. They have to go through a whole process, a whole foreclosure process. First, they got to call you, reach out to you, send you a notice, send you letters. Then they have to go through a judge, depending if you're in a blue state or red state. In blue states like Maryland, California, New York, it might take them way longer to even try to take over the property. In red states like Texas, where I'm at right now, it might take them only 3 months. So if they want their money paid, so let's say hypothetically in this scenario on the property that happens to me is a property that I bought this same exact way in Glen Burnie, Maryland. Again, single family. So I bought the property subject to, and then I think about 6 months to a year after I purchased the property, the seller that sold me the property, he passed away. So when I bought the property, he had a girlfriend. When we closed on the property, him and his girlfriend got married, I think 2 months or 3 months later. But that's after I bought the property. So she was not part of the transaction. So after they got married later, then he passed away. Then she reached out to me and she said, Mamadou, my husband passed away. And if you don't give me, maybe she was going through a lot of difficulty. I just didn't like the way she approached it, so I didn't do it. But she was like, if you don't give me $5,000, I am going to go to Wells Fargo. This is also another VA loan, and tell them that you bought the property subject to. By the way, when we buy this property subject to, obviously, typically, if you're a good, acquisition person, you do a full disclosure to the homeowner. So you explain the mechanics, you explain the process, and you explain the risk involved. So when they're making the decision and they're signing the paperwork, it fully says that they fully agree and understand all the risk involved, and they weren't drunk, they weren't, under any drug influence when they made the decision and signed the paperwork, right? So there's full disclosure. It's not like you did anything illegal. Everything went through, again, a title company or a title attorney. You did a title search, you closed on it legally, you got a title insurance, everything on the property. So there's nothing illegal about it. So when she called me and she said, if I don't give her the $5,000, she will walk into Wells Fargo and tell them I bought the property subject to, knowing full well I disclosed about this, the due on sale. What she was hoping is that Wells Fargo will call the note due, call the due on sale. So Wells Fargo contacted me. They said, hey, you bought this property and we didn't lend you the money. Like, can we see the paperwork, the closing documents? I said, absolutely. When I bought the property, the homeowner was behind $18,000. So essentially he was in pre-foreclosure. I got caught up on that, and we've been making the payments on time, right, each month. So I'll send you guys all the documents from my attorney. When I sent in the document, Wells Fargo never called me up to now. And it's been like over 2 years. I still own this property. I finance it to a family. I'm in the process of selling it as we speak because the family is in default. But again, the risk is there. Now let's take this scenario. Let's imagine this already happened to a bunch of newbies that I know that DM me personally. They just don't want to talk about it on Facebook or whatever the case may be, or in the community they're part of, because obviously somebody is going to criticize them or whatever, or maybe they're just ashamed, right? But imagine this happened to you where the bank goes, okay, it's time to pay up. It's time, we're going to call the note due. Regardless, Mamadou, that you sent us the paperwork and we see that you legitimately bought the property, you went through an attorney, right? You did all your due diligence, you got caught up, you've been making the payments on time. The bank can still decide, right? It's up to them that we are going to move forward and call the note due. So you have to pay. You either have to pay or you have to do what is called a refinance on the property, right? If you do a refinance, that process, what it will do is it will cash out the existing loan on the homeowner's name, and then you put a new loan on your name or your company's name, depending if you take a DSCR loan or a personal loan. So if you do the refinance, at that point now, they can't call the note due because the new loan will be on your name, and that solves the problem. Here's the problem. If you bought a low equity property, what don't you have? You don't have equity. You don't have equity. So the solution to the due on sale for you, the buyer, if it happens, is one, you refinance the property. Two, you sell the property, right? So you sell it and just get it over with, because if you sell it, the new buyer that is going to buy it cash, even if they're not using their money and they're using financing, but when they buy it, there will be a new financing on the buyer's name and it'll cash out the existing one, right? And because the bank, obviously, like I said, they go through a process that might take about on average 90 days. Well, you have the time to list the property on the market with a realtor and try to sell it. But you can only sell it if it has equity. If it has equity, if it doesn't have equity, now you're stuck with a property that don't have equity. You can't sell it unless you write a check to sell the property, right? If you list it on the market, you're going to have to write a check, right? And you can't keep it because the bank want to, they want their money, and you cannot refinance because lenders will not refinance you on the property without equity, because on average, if your property is worth $400,000 and you have equity on it, the maximum loan to value, we call that LTV, loan to value, that they'll give you is about 75 to 80% of the value of the property. They will not give you more than that. So that means you have to have an average at least 25 to 30% of equity on your property in order to be able to do what is called a refinance. So if you can't sell it, you cannot do a refinance, right? By the way, this is specifically for newbies. You cannot refinance, you cannot sell it, you cannot, you cannot come up with the money, right? Because you're on the newer side. The reason this strategy is appealing for newbies is because I call us, the people that fell for this, in the beginning, lazy negotiators. Because there is no negotiations with this process. If you reach out, if you start with real estate wholesaling, for example, as a newbie, The strategy you're doing is obviously cold calling, outreach, texting. So you're looking for distressed homeowners, whether that they be going through pre-foreclosure, they're going through divorce, right? People that that have some sort of distress. And here you're looking for homeowners that obviously made a bad decision buying a property with low equity, and now they regret. They want to let it go, right? They want to move out, and they want this loan completely out of their name, but they also don't have the money to sell to bring to the table to close on the property. And so when you call them, right, for the people that don't want to sit down and cold call, like pre-foreclosure sellers, for example, but also homeowners that have equity, because it takes, not only takes time, it takes persistence, it takes consistency. A lot of people don't want to do that. That's number one, right? And so this strategy is very appealing to a newbie that want to make quick, that want to get maybe their first quick rental with no money out of pocket, and you don't have to cold call a bunch of people to get deals like this, because the homeowner actually want out of the loan. Like, they're begging you to take over this loan. That's the number one pain, right? It's not because they're begging you to take the loan that means it's a deal. The only negotiation involved in a transaction that is a low equity deal is, are you good at explaining how Subject-To works? Are you good at explaining the difference between Subject-To and loan assumption? Are you good at explaining the risk involved? Are you somebody who is, really good at fully disclosing to the homeowner that, hey, if you sell me this property this way, just so you understand, this is how the mechanics works. You don't own the property no more. This is how you're protected. This is how I am protected in case the due on sale happens. This is how I'm going to solve it. I don't want you to panic, right? If you are able to do that, you get yourself a deal. There's no negotiations involved whatsoever. Now, if you have a real estate agent in the middle, that adds a little bit of a complicated layer onto the deal. But still, even with real estate agents, if a homeowners hire them and they list the property on the market, and that property stays for 6 months or more on the market, they want to get rid of it because they're only going to make a commission when they sell it. So if you're able to convince them that, hey, since nobody on the market want to buy it cash, right? I can buy it Subject-To, and I'll pay you your commission still. They're more than open to, at least the way I used to do it. I'll have them put me on a three-way with the homeowner, and I'll explain it myself, because 99.9% of real estate agents have absolutely no clue how creative finance works, or they don't even invest themselves. Even their primary residents, 99.9% of them don't own. So I don't let them explain the process, because all they'll do is confuse the homeowner, right? So again, guys, as a newbie in real estate, typically 99.9% chance that you're low on cash. That's how I was. So you're low on cash, you're trying to make cash. Then you get to a point where you start having all these FOMOs, depending on what kind of community you've joined. You see everybody posting about getting their first rental, no money down, getting their first wholesale deal, whatever. If you're just wholesaling these deals, that's fine. That's fine if the buyer is fully aware of what, the risk they're taking. But if the property is low equity, the only person that benefit from these properties, guys, the only person that benefits from low equity, especially single family rentals, is business people that already have so many other businesses bringing them cash, and they're using these rentals as tax write-offs, not for cash flow. Not that they plan on flipping it anytime soon, but they have all these different businesses generating cash, and they want to use these properties as depreciating assets, and taking advantage of the tax code, obviously, to deduct, right, their taxes on that active income that they're making in their respective businesses. And so they're using this strategy. That works for those people. But most newbies that get into real estate, in the beginning, you have zero businesses generating a lot of cash. You don't have a pile of cash sitting down in your bank account in case something like this happen. You can cash it out yourself because you have the money, or you have such a great network that somebody will be willing to be a private lender, give you the money, maybe an uncle, maybe an aunt, right? So if you take down this property as rentals, right, especially as rentals, the people that I saw, including me, I did the mistake on two properties with this strategy, and I learned the hard way. Luckily for me, I was able to sell these and break even. But I know a lot of newbies, dozens, guys. I'm part of a community. All these newbies reach out to me and tell me, because obviously we talk privately. And so I've seen newbies offload 12, 15, 20 different properties because they went and focused on that niche. I'm only going to do low equity deal rentals or Airbnbs, what we didn't calculate, or you don't, we typically just focus on the upside, right? The great part of it. Like, oh, I'm going to generate all this cash flow from Airbnb, but we don't look at our worst case scenario. What is the worst case scenario? The worst case scenario is the economy could change. The worst case scenario is, the location where you bought the property. It might be that, okay, you can, rent it for 6 months, generate consistent cash flow, but then your property is vacant for 4 months. So you're bleeding money. Or, your worst case scenario could be that you bought a property in a location where, in case you want to sell it, nobody wants to buy in that area as well, right? Yes, you got a rental. Yes, it's bringing you $400 or $600 or 1,000, whatever the case may be. But now if you try to sell it, nobody wants to buy it because most people are not moving in that area, right? So we don't calculate, we don't look at all of those things. So I had to learn the hard way that when you're underwriting a property, you typically even want to start with your worst case scenario, not your best case scenario. Your worst case scenario, not your best case scenario. Even in the case, guys, where you're taking down low equity properties and your goal is to assign it, right? Wholesale it to a cash buyer and the cash buyer deals with it. I want you to know that you will always, in some way, shape, or form, still be involved in the transaction. Why is that? Because who reached out to the homeowner at first? I have properties right now that I've wholesaled probably about 2 years ago. Every single time, subject to, I put the terms together, I negotiated the terms, and then I assigned my terms to a cash buyer. Up to now, when the buyer misses a payment, pay late, instead of paying the 5th, they paid the 8th, the homeowner still texts me. They don't text the buyer, even though I did the introduction. And the reason for that is because I am the one who negotiated the deal. So who built credibility with the homeowner that is selling the property? Me, you, the person that did the acquisition, or your team, right? So you talk to them, they trust you, they like you, they said, okay, Mamadou, or okay, Daryl, I trust you, I like you. You've been following up with me, you've been consistent, so I'm gonna sign this contract. When they sign the contract, now you take that contract and you assign your rights obviously to the contract, so you're out of the picture technically. But for the seller, you're not out of the picture. When problems arises, they will call you. And if there is ever issues where they go through a judge, and there's a lot of cases like that right now, where realtors helped a homeowner sell the property subject to, the buyer that bought the property completely disappeared, stopped paying the mortgage, the property cannot be sold, the homeowner's credit is going to shit, and the homeowner is breathing on the agent's neck, the agent is breathing on the wholesaler's neck, the wholesaler is breathing on the buyer's neck. A bunch, guys. A lot of people just not talking about it online, right? So when you're first getting started, if you build your rental portfolio with this strategy, because it sounds nice, because it's for lazy acquisition people, meaning people that don't want to cold call regular sellers that have equity on the property, because with those sellers, it requires you to harness, right, and sharpen your negotiation skills. You can't just wing it. You can't just call these people and just explain how subject-to works. If somebody has equity on their property, you have to come with your A game when it comes to negotiations in order for you to get that deal at a discount and walk in with equity. So in case, even if you keep it as a buy and hold in the back end, if there is an issue, guess what? You can sell it because there is equity, right? But that requires for you to be consistent and learn negotiations that most people don't do. So when this strategy came about and then it got made so popular, is people got excited about it because there is not a lot of negotiation involved. They don't have to do a lot of work to it. By the way, me included, I regretted it after my second property. I'm like, no, this strategy actually sucks for a newbie. It's completely going to drain you. So if you're building your rental portfolio with this strategy, it's almost like building a business, with what is that analogy? With a house of cards. It's like building a business and your foundation is sand. One day, it's just going to, right? Like just a little wind and that shit will disappear. All right, guys. So it works for the people that are generating so much cash in their respective different businesses and all they need is the tax write-offs. It works for them. But you as a newbie, stay away from keeping low income rentals. You're definitely building your rental portfolio in a minefield, right? And one day it's going to explode on your face. Guarantee. You can't just keep going around because all the risk you're taking, so the tenant can stop paying. Your wrap buyer, for those of you that are familiar with creative finance, your wrap buyer can stop paying. I have one right now in Maryland. I've been trying to foreclose on him for about a year. I spent about $18,000 trying to foreclose on him. Finally, I got the deed on my name, right? And I'm selling the property. Luckily for me, I have equity. If I didn't have equity, I would be stuck with this property. I'll be stuck with this property. And there is a bunch, I'm telling you guys right now, that sold their portfolio because once the tenants stopped paying, once Airbnb stopped working, once the location where they were renting maybe as a traditional rental, the tenants stopped paying, they started bleeding money, and then they realized, oh shit, I can't even sell this property. So some of them, they did it the coward. I would say is being a coward. Because if you negotiated with a homeowner and you bought the property, and then just because now you're having a little bit of difficulty because your tenant is not paying and you just disappear on the homeowner, and the homeowner have to figure out how to foreclose on that property and take it over. To me, I call that cowardice. Like, you shouldn't be in business in the first place. You should try to find a solution. You should try to list this property on the market, see if you can negotiate with the lender to take a discount or maybe do a short sale, whatever. Try to find a solution. One of the properties, I helped the newbie. What I helped the newbie do is, I told the newbie, listen, call the homeowner that you bought the property from. You're going to list it based on the math we just did. If you sell this property, you're probably going to come up with like $8,000, right? See if the homeowner, explain the homeowner the situation, full disclosure. Hey, listen, I bought the property, things went wrong, and now I have to sell it because otherwise your credit is going to go to shit. And the due on sale might be called on me. I really don't know, but I can't keep it because I keep bleeding. But if I list it on the market, I have to bring $8,000 to close, which right now, based on my situation, I don't have. But in order to save your credit, since I am going to sell it on the market anyway, are you willing to help bring maybe 50% of it on the table? Right? Guess what? The homeowner said yes. He said yes, because he's starting to see his credit decline. And if you live here in the US and you have, your brain cells are functioning, the importance of credit. You don't play with credit. Credit is everything here in the US. If you have good credit, you have access to capital, you have access to housing, you can buy a car, whatever. If you don't have credit here, you can't even rent an apartment without credit. So credit is everything. So messing up your credit, it's like a nightmare for a lot of people. It's like that's their biggest nightmare. And so the homeowner was like, you know what? Thank you for being transparent. I'll actually try to see if I can put some money together, and I'll bring it to the closing table. So now they went 50-50 just to pay for the closing costs, because they can only sell the property for what the property is owed on it. All right, guys. So I'm telling you right now, you do not want to get too excited about this strategy as a newbie. If you don't have a lot of cash yet sitting down, right? If you don't have a lot of cash in your bank account, stay away from low equity rentals, especially the single family ones. Because the thing with the single family, guys, is if you take a single family one, oftentimes you can only rent it to a family or one person. Or if you're going to live in it yourself, only one person can live in it. So it's not bringing you a lot of income anyway, right? And most single families, the places where they're at, Airbnb doesn't really work great in those kind of locations. So even if your Airbnb perform 3, 4 months, 6 months, 8 months, at some point you start having it vacant for a lot of months and you start bleeding money, right? So when you're new, you want to focus on stacking your cash. So wholesaling, fix your credit. You can access funding to fix and flip, right? You can access funding at 0% to fix and flip through an LLC if your credit is 700 plus, right? You can do real estate new development. So these are all projects you can resell in the back end to make a profit. So your first and second year should be focused on stacking your cash. Not get too excited about having tenants and toilet leaks and termites and expenses, and the AC unit goes off and it's $6,600 out of the window. All your cash flow is out of the window, especially your second year, second year to third year, right? Don't be somebody who, I think it's Jim Rohn that said this quote. He said, be a student, not a follower. Be a student, not a follower. I don't care what community you join. I don't care what coaching you join. I'm all in to invest in yourself, right? I invest in myself all the time. I pay for coaching all the time. But it's not because I am being coached by somebody that I start worshiping them or just following everything they say blindly, because that person is still a human being. Certain strategies that they try to teach, right? Even though it might come from a good heart, might be a good fit for them, but not a good fit for you where you're at, based on your social standards, based on your ethics, based on your financial situation. So you sometimes have to look at what they're teaching and go, okay, what is in it for me? What is in it for me? Am I in a situation where I can afford to do this strategy, and how is it going to benefit me? Am I being sold right now, or am I selling myself? Because if you're being sold, you might not want to do it. But if you sell it to yourself as a good thing to do for you, your financial future, your family, then great. But trust me, the stress, right, and the nightmares you deal with this low income rentals is absolutely not worth it. And I wish more newbies, guys, you can go on Daryl Ellison's Instagram right now, right? I helped Daryl, get his first creative finance deal. Actually, I think it's his first and second. I helped him negotiate it on a 3-way. We put it under contract, we wholesaled it, and we split the assignment fees. And it's funny because recently, 2 or 3 years after, we got a text from the homeowner and an email. He was very angry because the buyer that we wholesaled one of the deals to in Baltimore City stopped paying, I think for about 2 months. We are the ones who started getting the call. So I helped Daryl get his first and second creative finance deal. I used to help him negotiate because he was way newer than me. But then obviously we all went our separate ways, and he started doing a bunch of different strategies himself. And today he's posting on his Instagram himself, showing how he is in $3,000 negative debt because of low equity rentals and low equity deals. $300,000 minus. And he's the only one who has the balls enough to actually post and talk about his journey coming out of that online. All the other newbies, they're talking about it, but offline, or they're posting on random Facebook groups, or they're talking about it privately. They might DM you because you know you're part of the community, but they're not going to talk about it online. But there's a bunch of newbies in bad debt because of low equity rentals. Sorry if this hurt somebody's feelings. I absolutely don't care. I really had to talk about it because it did hurt me myself on 2 properties. I'll never do that again. So low income rentals, guys, once you make your cash, if you now you need tax write-offs because you're making shitload of cash, go buy low equity rentals all you want. If your strategy, your exit strategy is tax write-offs, then you don't care. You don't care if they call the due on sale. You don't care if their tenants stop paying because you have cash. And you have maybe, at this point, maybe you're building too many properties at once. So you're generating a lot of cash through real estate new development. Maybe you're doing too many fix and flips. You're generating cash through those profits. Maybe you started doing business acquisitions and you're buying businesses that is already generating cash flow and you just need the tax write-offs, right? At that point, why not? But before then, focus and stop having FOMO. Stop just following everything you see people post and just get excited about it because it sounds easy. Typically, if it's easy, it should also tell you that it might not be a good idea. The reason it's easy is because probably not a good idea. All right, guys. Anyway, guys, I'll see you guys on the next episode. We can talk about this all day. Make sure you check out my playlist on creative finance, guys. Any video you see me talking about low equity deals, trust me, it was in the beginning. I no longer do those strategies. I no longer co-sign on it at all. I don't advise it to newbies specifically, but I still talk about creative finance obviously as a great strategy. You just got to make sure every single time you negotiate these deals, you bake in equity. Make sure you only target homeowners that have equity. And if you're a newbie, and you want to get into real estate and you're tired of being on the sidelines, guess what? We've created a weekly, my team and I, a weekly Q&A specifically for newbies, answering all your questions, teaching you how to underwrite properties, teaching you how to make offers, teaching you how to come up with 0% loans for 12 to 18 months. We even do it for you. So we've put that all together. And if you're interested in that, I'll put a link down below. Make sure you reach out. And yeah, guys, I'll see you guys on the next episode. Until then, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and keep that boom mindset, guys. Stay bold, stay obsessed, stay optimistic. And lastly, keep a mindset that's abundant. I'll see you guys on the next one. Boom, boom, boom.